Hello, everyone, and welcome to our conversation with two wonderful composers today. I am joined by the wonderful Wynton Marsalis and Tan Dun, two composers who were actually featured on the final concert that we had at the Cabrillo Festival in 2019. My conversations take place remotely because of their schedules and the different time zones that we were faced with in this challenge to be able to bring this to you, but I hope you enjoy these conversations. We are the Cabrillo Festival of Contemporary Music. I am Cristian Mochelaru, the music director and conductor of the festival. Thank you for joining us. Okay, well, hello, and thank you so much for joining me. I am joined today by the wonderful, wonderful composer and if I can call you friend as well, Tan Dun, who we have collaborated. We have collaborated a few times, not enough, but we will do more in the future. And I have to tell you, of course, we performed in the last live season that we had in Cabrillo. We performed Nushu, which is a piece that I was involved with from the very beginning of its creation. I still remember when you brought it to Philadelphia for the first time and premiered it there in Philadelphia. And I have to tell you, our audience was so touched and so excited by this wonderful music and what it represents as well, because you always bring to your composition, you bring outside thoughts and forces that are not just about the music. And this is something that I've always admired about your style of composition, because you bring in the entire world with you. So can you tell us a little bit how do you find these unique projects that you always bring in your music?
Oh, that was actually fantastic memory when you premiered a new show in Cabrillo Festival. Actually, Wynton Marsalis sent me a live picture. He was showing off on in the concert, and a lot of people like John Adams, a lot of good friends actually told me that was a great concert, and I was so sorry I wasn't able to be with you, but everybody loved it, and that's very special. Sometimes the composer not really every piece could be always shared perfectly, but that's a very good, because the piece called the New Shu, it shows actually 13 pieces of music video I recorded in a very rural village about a very old tradition. All those women, they create their own language by singing and calligraphy, but only circulating using inside of women tells the secret of woman. But of course, this language is always by singing from a mother to the daughter. So I thought that's a marvelous actually bridge to have a symphonic sound emerging with some old, very old melody, old colors. And that's how I always interested in actually old colors to blending and refining my new sound. And the New Shu certainly is a very interesting piece. Actually, I was worried about actually when I write this beautiful tradition, and I worry about it too. First of all, Christian is a man. How could a man conducting a women's music? And secondly, it's a very interesting sound world relating to the women's secret language, that very old tradition. But then I find it interesting. Maybe it's a virtual time, internet time, multimedia time. It seems like the Christian, you get the spirit of a woman's secret language.
Well, I was so involved from the beginning when you created the piece, because I remember we were talking before before the piece was played for the first time in Philadelphia, we were trying to find a way to make the piece work. And because, I think everyone in Philadelphia was really surprised by what you created. They didn't know what to expect. And this is one of the things about your composition style, that you'd never know what to expect until you see the piece.
I think you were very sensitive actually in the rehearsal. I remember that's a few years ago, and yes. you had very, very interesting conductors. I think we never had this kind of a technique for the conducting. You have to really synchronizing by reading the video lines, but meanwhile to conduct with the video line, but sending this breathing and the climax, whatever, perfectly to the live orchestra, and not so easy. Be honest, but it seems like very natural to you. Is that because you're more young and you like all kinds of electronics also?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the truth, but I just remember listening to the video over and over and over, trying to remember what it sounds. But you are a great performer yourself. You conduct a lot, and you do a lot of your own music. I'm curious, how has your composition changed since you started conducting, or has it changed?
Changed so much. Actually, I have to say, it's much better if you know a little bit of conducting. That's why I always encourage my students learn a little bit of conducting and look at old time before Baroque time. The people conducting, composing, performing all the time as one. So I find when I know more and more conducting, actually I'm able to write my orchestration and my parts simply, much more practically, in a timely, manageable, to reach a complexity of very rich colors. So basically using the simplicity to carry very complexity ensemble color, and that's what, as I learned from conducting.
Yeah, because you also bring so much of your folk traditions and the music, from the past, from your culture, that you bring in a completely different kind of orchestra. So musicians many times, now I think more orchestras where I perform your music, people already start to recognize the style that you write, so this is, but I remember, 5 or 10 years ago, you had to explain all these things. No, you have to lift, and then it has to be a quick gesture, or it has to be, as I know in your music, when you write something that it's like Stravinsky, it has to sound with this intensity, and how short it needs to be, and all these things. I performed a few of your pieces, but one very memorable performance I remember in Philadelphia, when you conducted your opera in Philadelphia, and this was I was in the audience, actually. I didn't. You were conducting, but I remember being there, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. To see how you are able to combine the two different cultures. You take from the Eastern culture, and then you combine with Western musical instruments. You bring some of your instruments as well, and of course extended instruments, the use of water and the percussion and the stones and things like this, and paper. It's really quite fascinating. So I just wanted you to know that I've enjoyed it very much. Now, you were involved in a project as well with this YouTube a few years ago. That now, the YouTube Symphony, and now it seems like everyone is trying to do a similar kind of thing, with this idea. Can you tell us a little bit about this YouTube Symphony?
Well, that was about actually 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the Google, the marketing fellows, they called me this, is that possible? Are you interested to do this crazy orchestra idea to bring all young people together from different countries, different cultures, even in different time zone. The only thing we can do is if you could find a compositional idea to synchronize everybody same time. Then I said, that's very, very interesting. You know, I love crazy things actually. When I'm cooking, I always love those very, very strange, you know, even rosemaries and white peppers, or all this kind of, but when I doing music, any recipe suggesting something we've never done, I get excited. Then because I always find the orchestra in the last hundreds of years, maybe mostly discovered diatonic, harmonic Western sound structure. But somehow, if you goes to the back hundreds of years, thousands of years, you see people had different idea to organize the sonority. And I also find it interesting, now we're in the internet time or virtual time, online time, and people actually, the composers specifically, they have a complete idea to reorganize their texture for the sound and also for the speed and the harmony. So that time, it was a great opportunity. Actually, I deconstructed the melody and harmony, and I recorded actually with the and the string part, wind part, harp, percussion. We actually deconstructed every lines of the orchestra texture and sent in or posted by, hey, is anybody interested to play? If you're a timpanist or if you, then actually thousands and millions of people, actually young people join us. Then I find it's very interesting. But the internet can be very easily actually deconstruct and reconstruct the orchestral sonority. And I found that's very, very interesting idea, actually. Have this is 1 + 1 = 1, or 1 + 1 + 1. But as a one, that shows a wonderful philosophy of orchestra. You know, you as a wonderful, wonderful conductor today, of course, you probably understand how sometimes when we rehearse the large orchestra, and we always do this deconstruction, always, you know, in the orchestra space where we do the percussion first, but every other parts are listening. But this time we did online, we did in the internet. But actually, I felt it's a large space, it's a large rehearsal room, but this rehearsal room is a universal, you know.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It's fascinating because, you know, I think one of the things that happened last year when the pandemic started, all of a sudden, everyone had to become an expert in doing what you had done already so many years before. And I think a lot of people were trying to find inspiration and how can these things be achieved with different musicians recording their own individual lines at home and then trying to put everything together. We have a question here from one of our people in the community that asks, do you always come up with your own inspiration, or do you, when you compose music, or do you wait for a commission? Or in other words, do you write just for the love of writing, or do you wait for a commission to begin a specific piece?
Actually, I always do my own. Actually, I find the composer is a doctor for the nature, is a doctor for the spirit. But in terms of curing for or thinking for everybody, but sometimes always started with yourself. Because, for example, like when the pandemic started and the whole world, actually, I didn't hear any composer speak of it. And everybody gets a little jet lagged. What's happening between those things? But I find I see people dying. But why I didn't hear the sound like ancient time, those shamans singing soar like sonority to send the spirit away, fading away. And I found maybe we should write something. Then of course, I wrote that piece, Pray and Blessing. Have a 6 percussions from New York and 6 percussion from Shanghai to have this praying for the nature. Then I found that every piece of mine, it always happened that way when I find myself was deeply involved or touched by the nature or by something, even society, like this pandemic. I will, insist I should go this direction because this is the urgent. I always think the composer needs to be always urgent to deal with the spiritual matters. So I'm the lucky one. So sometimes I talking to the conductor, like I was talking to a Philadelphia orchestra. I said, "Oh, interesting. I see the sacred language. Oh, only mother talking to the daughters and speak the secret about how to be a mother, how to be a sister, how to be a daughter." Then I find the people are so supportive and say, "Oh, interesting. Can you tell me more? Can you tell me more?" Then I start to talk more. Then they start to be interested. But actually, I never had much. Yeah, I only had one time actually when that 15 years ago when the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, the 12 cellos, they said, "Can you write a 12 cello concerto for us?" Then of course it's a 12 cellos. I said, "Oh," and I get that sort of inspiration immediately. I said, of course, yeah, I do that too." But even I say immediately I accepted the commission is because I know something immediately spiritually hooked up.
I think it's so evident for everyone that listens to your music and reads and follows what you say about music. It's so evident this connection that you have on a spiritual level with the music and what this means to you. I also really love the fact that you refer so much to nature in all of your music, and you always come back to nature. Yeah.
So to me, we say orchestra, to me, it's very, very new arts, very, very young arts. It's only, 500, 6 years, 100 years. And to me, the discovery for the orchestral color, we see Mozart, Bach, Beethoven did a great job. But still, I think we are facing a new era, specifically, hundreds of years ago, we're much more focused on the diatonic, symphonic, and physic sort of scientific structures and ideas. But actually, when you open up your composing mind to the color of the orchestra, the texture of the color of nature and the texture of nature, you find, my God, what you learned from the conservatory, harmonic techniques, counterpoint, orchestration, actually, it's not enough. How to deal with, sometimes it makes me crazy because I'm thinking it's a Bach first or Bach's technique first. It's about the fugue, about the canon, about, because that kind of technique is so refined. It must be Bach and God, they invented technique first, then start to compose, but actually not. I think Bach composed first, then all the techniques, knowledge comes with the nature status and his spirit and music. I think sometimes contemporary composers, it is like a Bach. They have to write the music first, urgently to capitalize the color of nature, the spirit. Then gradually, you see, the technique follows up. The refined philosophy, scientific method for the sound comes up out of his composition and discovery. So that was what I felt when I see beautiful colors from nature. I just do it, no matter it's buying and blowing and bowing and Piscati. I just trying to gather using the orchestra as a pen to do whatever color should be. For example, when I see the Japanese tsunami, when I wrote the Tears of Nature, my percussion concerto, the second movement, when I see this big waves of the ocean, like just 1 second, all the children, all the buses, all the trains are gone. And that kind of overwhelming nature power, sometimes when I start to write it, I think about what kind of melody, what kind of layers, what's the counterpoint. Then I said, why? Why I have to write urgent feelings and the colors, whatever naturally just happened according to the hundreds of years old technique of composing? Why just do it like a pen, color pen? So sometimes actually I caused some troubles for the conductor like you, but thanks God, you know, the arts actually has a certain hidden knowledge. No matter your animal, and no matter your birds, no matter your messian, no matter you are whatever, but they can talk. Actually, this kind of a secret language caused me thinking about how a secret language between the women's, like a mother and daughters in the ancient time. I totally understand. That's why I think Gabriel Festival is the festival actually I admire so much, because that kind of festival, from a historic point of view of sound, art, and spirit, it's something permanently belong to the highest civilizations of a human being, you know.
Well, we really appreciate that, and I can't wait to have you come be with us in person at the festival, so that you experience, you know, because one of the most beautiful things that I love about our festival is the fact that there are many people, and we always have the rehearsals open. The rehearsals are always open to the public, and there are many people that come and they experience from the first note of the rehearsal, they experience how the piece develops all the way until the concert. And this is something that so many people in our community do this every rehearsal, and they experience, as the musicians learn the music as well, you know, they experience the growth of the piece, or the understanding of the piece a little bit more, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating to be able to get inside the music even more. Now, I have to tell you, you know, at the concert, as you said, Wynton Marsalis was there, and we discussed so long after the performance, after he heard Nushu, he wanted to look at the score, and I showed him the score, and we looked at it together, and because he was fascinated by one thing that he kept coming back to. He said, you know, the genius of this piece for me, Wynton said, is the fact that you had a perfect sense for the timing of when one thing had to go and introduce a new idea, or change a little bit, or change the orchestration, or change the pacing or the tempo, or something that had to change, so that a piece that is, you know, it's 30 minutes plus, you know, you feel like it happens in 1 second. You know, and he was just fascinated with this. So I just wanted to tell you that, because we looked at the score for a long time. Yeah, he and I, we looked at the Nushu, so because he really wanted to understand, like, how did he do that? How did he do that?
You know,
color?
sometimes, you know, when you orchestrate or compose, it's like a shiatsu doctor. It's like a massage. And when you're doing a Swedish massage, or when you're doing Japanese shiatsu, you see, when you touch the muscle, you know exactly how quick, how sooner should be go with the muscle and blood. And actually to massage the sound. Actually, it's like you massage your friend, the skins. Actually, same kind of experience. It's very interesting. And I think I also actually, when I listening, you're conducting Wynton Marsalis's violin concerto, that was amazing composition, incredible. I love that piece so much because what really drive me happy and really hyper is the energy of the piece. I think that piece had a very, very natural spirit to synchronize your blood tempo and your way of feeling the sound simultaneously, actually. And I love the sonority, always like a fading calligraphy, fading ink paintings, but be there, every beat's different, but actually from whole big structures, the changes all the times. Very, very powerful. Thank you. I enjoy it so much, actually, your collaboration, I have to say.
Thank you. I will tell Wynton so that he knows he's a very big fan. So, well, you know, again, we can't wait to have you in residence with us in Cabrillo. I'm gonna ask you to promise us now that you're gonna come.
Please invite me. I will come anytime. Even I'm gonna take a boat from Shanghai. I'd love to.
So we'll find the next project that we can do together, and I know that you will enjoy it as well when you're there. But thank you so much. It has been wonderful to hear your thoughts and your spirit and philosophy about the music. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another one of our sessions with Composers in Conversation, which I feel a little bit, you know, silly to say this because one of our guests today, Wynton Marsalis, is not just a composer, he is so much more than that. I also am very happy to be able to call Wynton a friend. And it's been really incredible, Wynton, getting to know you and to share in the last few years since we met, to understand and to talk to you so much about your philosophy as a human being and as an artist, and the way that you are combining those two aspects in your life. And I think the one thing that you've said to me over and over and over every time we've talked about music and about art, you've always said, this is very personal to me. Can you tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Well, you know, it's just like with you and I and our relationships, and coming from musical families, also experiencing our fathers passing away kind of around the same time, even though I'm much older than you. It's similarities we have with Cheryl. You know, we come from a kind of a connected background, and I think that there are connections that run through people. We call it bloodlines in jazz. It always amazed me, the connections between people. You would think they had nothing in common, but then when you started to research their background and their history, you found out, okay, they know this and they know that. So when I say it's personal, it's like things that when things are personal, it's not a business arrangement. Like, this music is what we do for our lives. Like, an example would be, I had a score, and I work on music, and I love working on music, but you're looking at thousands of scores a year. You know a lot of scores. So you looked at my score for me. You took a lot of time doing it. We didn't really know each other. And you made a lot of really good, intelligent suggestions. And it was after a concert, after you worked all day, after you had rehearsed. That kind of stuff is personal. And I find that in a crisis, when you're working with people, even when you have difficult things like a union negotiation or something that it has contention around it, and it's the way of life. When it's personal, and when you put people first, and when you think in terms of your community, it makes decisions that you make much easier. There are losses you're willing to sustain when things are personal. That when it's not personal, there's not a level of care and interest. So, you know, when I say that, that's what I mean. I think that's what when I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking of kindred spirit, because of how much you put into all the scores you prepare, and all of the music you study and learn, and all of the things that you do to make you the type of artist that you are.
But I don't know if you feel this way, but to me, I also feel like in music, in performing with someone, there is a bond that is created in the moment on stage, which is so beautiful, because music is a communication and a language, and its meaning to me, has always been to bring people together. And then unfortunately, this is sometimes disturbed by what people do once they come together. But in its essence, music is meant to bring people together, right? And then it's an incredible bond that is created in that moment on stage. It's like it goes to a deeper meaning without having to talk about anything, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's because of the nature of music. It's so internal, and so much is unspoken. It's so gestural, and it's deeper than physical gestures, because many times you think the same thing at the same time, or it's so much intensity around internal things like thoughts and feelings and things that on a daily basis you keep them to yourself a lot of times. You're in meetings with somebody, you're talking, it's not necessary for everything you feel to be on the table for all of us to deal with. But when we're playing a concert, you're making so many decisions. I'm making so many decisions about the length of a note, or the turn of a phrase, or how we're going to balance with something, or something is messed up, or are you going to do this? It's so much in that way. And then there's always the pressure of a performance. If you start from a rehearsal, which there's never enough time, getting a score, rehearsing, talking about the music, trying to get through stuff in the time you have, then you have an audience that comes before you, and that audience puts a lot of pressure. And it's always interesting, because when you really think about it, there's not that much at stake that if you mess something up, you're not going to get executed for that. You're not going to, you didn't play it as well as you could play it. But there's so much pressure on it, because you want to sound good, and you've put so much into it, and you want the audience to feel, and you want to communicate what the piece is. And it's really a mutual enterprise. All of us, especially when you take something like a symphonic orchestra, that's 65, 70 people, 55, 80, that's a large force. And there's almost nothing we can think of in our cultures that allow for that many people to come together on a stage and be under that type of pressure to communicate something that's as ethereal as music. So I think that's what makes the performance of music with a symphonic orchestra in a hall such a sacred thing and such a special thing.
Mm. And you talk so much about the essence of the music and finding the essence of the music. And I've been thinking a lot about this, because having moved to Germany, there's a lot of classical music that we know and we love today that was actually used for propaganda during the Second World War and before by the Nazi Party, right? So that's not the fault of the composer, right? Because a lot of this music, the composers were already dead. I'm talking about Beethoven or whatever. And so in some ways, we actually end up bringing the meaning to the music at the same time as the composer intended at first. So how do you feel about someone taking your music and giving it a different meaning just based on what they are using it for?
I don't think you have control over that. Like, a lot of jazz was always used behind cartoons or some type of pornography. Well, the musicians didn't determine it would be. It's a famous case of Duke Ellington went out to Hollywood in the 30s. Mae West was responsible for him going out, and he did a piece. I think I don't remember exactly what it was based on. I think it was Hungarian Rhapsody. Maybe he did some kind of unbelievable connection between jazz and that. I wish I could. It's escaping me now, the actual piece. But when the producers at Hollywood, how they used it, they called it the rape of the Rhapsody, and they used Duke and them musicians to be destroying a piece of classical music, and it ends with the classical conductor shooting everybody. It's crazy when you look at it. And Duke was so upset by it that he sued the studio, and he won his suit. And then they recorded another piece he wrote called Rhapsody in Black, something like that. He used the title. So I think that he didn't have anything to do with how it was used. And I think musicians and composers, all they can do is write their music and put the meaning and use the symbols that exist in their time. to communicate. Music is such a symbolic, hyper-symbolic language. But it's not so symbolic that you can take like the sound of John Coltrane and make it be something that's, you're not gonna use Train's music on a cartoon. So, there's some things you can't do, some things you can. But I'm not a fan of the kind of reassessment of meaning of what somebody wrote for their music, and also of the analyzation of a person's personal life or political views or anything they could have. They could be deeply flawed. A person can be deeply flawed and write profoundly beautiful, lyrical, meaningful music. It's the nature of human beings. And we don't fall into good and bad camps in the way that we want, in the way we would like to see ourselves fall into that way. If that were the case, we would all probably individually be committing suicide out of just guilt of the things we've done to violate ourselves. So I know I'm giving you kind of a long answer, but I think meaning is very important, but it's important for us to always redeem the meaning of something. If we know the meaning, we've studied it, we understand what the symbology is. When I play with the great African master, Yakub Adi, he's from the Ga people of Ghana. I don't know what their music means. I'm trying to figure out what they're playing. So at one point he tells me, this is a royal rhythm. Man, and I'm like, man, I'm from Kendall, Louisiana. We don't have royalty and all of that. It's not royal to me. And he said, that's why you will never play it correctly. So, he was always talking about what things mean in their space. And also Paco De Lucia, the great flamenco guitarist. I asked him, man, what you think my chances of learning how to play something good on a bulerías? We're talking about a certain form in flamenco. He said, well, define good. You're gonna play something that somebody wants to learn, you're gonna struggle because you don't know what any of the melodies mean. So, it was interesting. The interesting thing about when he said that is I was thinking, man, these people's music, the form is very difficult, but the melody just sounds like they're playing scales. So he may have known, I just felt that I thought that by the way I was playing. And so I think it's incumbent upon us, the hardest thing in our job as musicians, when we play things that are outside of our cultural understanding, is to try to figure out what they mean.
Yeah, this reminds me actually, I had a few years ago, I had this chance of doing back-to-back weeks of the same repertoire. And I was doing a Bartók Concerto for Orchestra with a very, very wonderful orchestra in Western Europe. And they played perfectly. It was fantastic. And then the week after that, I went to Romania to do the same piece, where Bartók, it's a local call, right? And it wasn't as perfect, not every note was as perfect, but there was a different understanding of what that music represents, right? And it gave it, I felt like it gave it so much more depth,
right,
in the way that people understood that. So,
no, you're summarizing it. And I think that's what makes a conductor great. That's what makes an actor great. That's what makes a musician. The thing is for us to figure out what does it mean, and it has to be a certain amount of humility and you'll get as close as you can get. And sometimes you have a spiritual thing where you can just understand it. Like it's not, our things are spiritual. It's not, you could be a person, a Black American from Opelousas, Louisiana, and you could be speaking absolutely fluent Japanese in 2 months. And I know people who have done that. Just they come into a culture and they understand it. They know.
Mm-hmm. So we have a question actually that was sent in beforehand, and I think it's quite interesting. And the question is, what is it that you expect a conductor before the first rehearsal of one of your pieces? What do you expect the conductor to have done?
Well, if I get them the music early enough, I expect I expect them to just be able to make it through it, and to have I expect them to know the form and understand kind of the meaning of what I'm trying to convey. I expect them to just from a professional standpoint, even if they don't like the music, to want to know the meaning, to want to talk to whoever the composer is, in my case, and I'll talk you to death, so I can understand. They don't have time for all of that. But just to try to get it in where they understand the context to put the piece in, so that when they are conducting it and teaching it to the orchestra, they know what it is that they're teaching them. And of course, some things that are very complicated, it takes a long time to know what the it is. And once you leave the common language we all speak, if you're trying to actually speak a different language, it takes another entirely different set of skills. So it puts a lot of pressure on a conductor. When it's easy when you speak in a common language, which means just the kind of music and the nomenclature everybody is used to seeing, a lot of things they know already, you don't have to go over. But when you get people who are outside of that realm, like with my music, I'm always trying to see if I can get them to play like grooves and country things and things that orchestras don't normally do. This stuff is not hard for them to play technically, but it's difficult from a meaning standpoint. So, you know.
Well, I know that it took me a good couple of years of performing your music before I started understanding what you meant every time. You know, I would ask you, Wynton, is this the right tempo? And you would be like, man, he said, I don't know. He said, it's just like, just listen to the bass. You know, it would be like, just, it has to come off the bass line, you know? And I keep thinking, you know, there must be a way to quantify what you're saying, you know, in a metronome marking, but it's not, you know, because it's also what works with one orchestra, it doesn't work with another one, you know, and having the swagger or having the groove of something, it depends on the ability of the player, right? I mean, you know, a groove of someone that is struggling is different than a groove of someone that is just whistling it, right?
Right.
And that's, you know, all of that is so, I mean, it's something that you have to be both flexible and at the same time open to understanding it and listening it.
See, but and I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you, because I don't like when people are talking, they have mutual love fests for the enjoyment of the orchestra, because it's always like, no, not me, you. But this, I'm saying it because it's absolutely true. Of course, I've worked with a lot of conductors, and as a player, playing in the orchestra, playing solos, writing music. But with you, it's like you love music. So there may be some music I really don't like that you love. So what I love about being around you is you have things that you love that for me, you know, but then when you tell me, man, you know, such and such, or this and that, the love you have of something is you will ask questions about music. And I don't think you're just doing that with me. That's how you are. You're a certain way about music. You have that feeling like, man, we play music, we have this is great, and this is fantastic, this era, this thing, this new thing, this, you got to hear this, listen to that, you sent me music, man, listen to this in this moment. That type of enthusiasm is boyish. Like, it's like when you're a kid, you get that feeling. By the time you become a professional and an adult and you go through years of stuff, it's hard not to become like, you have certain things you have to do in a certain time, you have this, you have to have your responsibilities. With you, it's not that way, because you're asking questions. I was talking with Nikki and we were laughing about a piece that she just played, and she said, I'm gonna play with Christy. I said, one thing, he's gonna take his time. He's gonna know the music. It's fantastic concerto that Mark Simpson wrote. I said, Christy is gonna want to play the music. He's gonna learn it. He's gonna go through it. And it's just, you have to have the desire to do that, you know, because it's so much work and it's so much extra work beyond what it takes to just do your job. It's almost like a ball player that hustles. What makes people do that in the fourth quarter? I don't know. It's a thing. And work with you that's your way of working, you know. Well, and it's just how you are, and you even like that when you're describing a piece, not that you're conducting. And I mean it's uplifting for me.
Well, I turned that right back at you, actually, because I get that sense from your playing that every note has so much purpose and meaning and beauty. And it's, you know, and it's not, as you say, it's not, it just feels like a part of life, you know. It's so easy to communicate something that you've experienced, right? When you remove the barriers of a language, you know, that's how I feel about music. You know, and then it's such a beautiful thing. I performed with someone, and I was just thinking about this because he's an Armenian violinist, and you know, and when he plays, and I don't know what it is, I've never talked to him about this, you know, because I'm afraid to ask this question, but every time I've performed with him, you know, before he plays the first note, there's this deep breath, and I feel literally 100-year worth of struggle of the Armenian people, right? Going all the way back to the genocide. And and he puts that into every note that he plays. But
Right.
there's a way that and then he finishes the performance and it's like another person.
Right.
And I'm afraid to ask that question because I don't want to spoil the mystery, you know, of that incredible, intimate exploration.
Right,
You know?
right.
And I find this in your music a lot, actually. I find this because you refer so much in everything that you do is so beautifully informed by the entire past that has come before. You know, I'm always mesmerized. You know, when I listened to your music before I saw anything that you've written, I always felt like, oh, this is, you know, it's this and that, and it's beautiful. But then when I look at the music and the incredible documented way of the historical lineage of what you write, I don't think people really realize the sophistication and the effort and the knowledge that it has taken you to really document this, you know. And when you talk about jazz, you're not just talking about, well, it's what I do because I feel like it. I think people really think that it's not. It goes so much deeper than that. So you really truly tap into this long line of where we belong today as artists. You know, we don't come from nothing. Right, like we are contributing to this humanity existence.
Right. You know, I mean, you summarizing it, but just you mentioning, you know, you said Armenian violinist. You didn't say his name. Now let's just think. My high school band director was Armenian. Man, if you know, he's much older than me. So we were always arguing about racial things. So I was always black, white, you know, we always going, do you want to know about race relations? I'm Armenian, right? He would just go through his Armenian, man. You know, the genocide, the Turks, and he would. So when you say just Armenian, I immediately think of a guy that I loved that we, from the age of 13 to 17, like, you know, I would drive to rehearsals with him. I would go over to his house and we had political views. No, we weren't. Much older person, but about the Armenian genocide, the Armenian history, Armenian people, I could tell you much more than you would think I could tell you from being in his home, talking with him, hearing him make his point, and we are connected in that way. So for me, I believe that, you know, you don't have to go in one way or the other first. It's always like you're given a choice. Like you have to be for Armenian people or against Turkish people or for Black people against white people. You know, it's too simplistic. And in that way, we view the past and the present. It's like Uranus eats its children. Well, because when you read like the Greeks, they had a better understanding of how the generations work. That's why when you're reading through like some Greek tragedy or Greek play, you're thinking, man, why do I need to know Laertes is the son of so-and-so and the son of blah, 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 blah. Why am I hearing about 8 generations of this person to get there? It's because they understood something about larger cycles. We have lost that knowledge. I mean, just the generic we. We believe that that the things we do are going in a direction, and that the more intensely personal and individualistic a language is, the more, I don't know, the more something cutting edge. I don't even know the terms that we use. I never believed that. I believe that the communal space is the richest space, and it includes all of those things. It includes very personal, individualistic ruminations. But if you and I start to talk, Krista, you know, you could speak in another language. Well, that excludes me. You could at a certain point say, you know, I'm gonna speak in my mother tongue. So, okay, you start to speak, I don't know what you're saying. And you that's your choice, because you can speak different languages. And you can write music that I can't play. Or like when Paco was talking to me, he said, what do you want to play? I said, I need to play something I can play. Because if you play something I can't play, if you play some really fast bouderias with a form I can't hear, obviously I can't play on it. So I feel like at a certain point, the whole concept of elite and elitism and elite classes and classism, when you look at the aspirations of a lot of the musicians, Bach, Beethoven, even Wagner, who's equated with a lot of things, he was actually trying to figure out how to come up with something the regular person could like. Now, it seems crazy somebody write four-hour operas and think a person would come off the street and want to hear that. But that was his aspirations, was to find something for people, you know? And I feel like there's a power in communality. Like, I feel great when I'm with your family. I get together with you. We start to talk about things, our families, and we're from totally different places in the world. But the reason we come to the stage, or we come to things with a certain understanding and specificity, is because of our upbringing. And when you tell me something about, well, this was that, or my father said this, and we were singing that, listen, my sister does that. It's very specific. I don't think, oh, that's just any kind of thing they just did. With American music, and because of racism, there's always a thought that when a Black person did something, it just came to them. They just, they just show up with something. I mean, the earlier musicians also were a part of that. Like, they had funny things they would say. Like Louis Armstrong, you ask him, what is jazz? And he say, if you have to ask, you'll never know. Or, they have like phrases they would say, okay, they were playing into that. But when it came to what they were doing, they were very specific. I remember the first time I looked at Duke Ellington scores, because I too thought it was the band was right. You don't know what people, man, first his hand was so good. And this was a score from 1931. So it was an early score. It was so organized and well written out and intelligent and economical, and the counterpoint, everything totally written out. The bass line, the clarinet solo. I was like, and he wrote all of this out? It wasn't a transcription. I mean, nobody's gonna take their time in 1931 to transcribe a piece that's just, so it's, yeah, with me, with my music, I think in this time, it's important to translate all of our things into something that large ensembles can play. And for when that large ensemble eventually understands, okay, this is how this sounds when it's played right, and when that groove, the time will come, and when the people really can hear, because with our music, it's always like that. Our job is to write it in such a way that it can be played. Because if you just listen to what Paul Chambers played, or if you listen to Freddie Green, or if you understand what a 4/4, what the walking bass line sounds like, or what a New Orleans counter line is, you'll play it a different way. Now, if you don't understand what it is and you don't listen to it, you're not gonna ever play it. So
I had a piece, because I remember you're talking about Freddie Green. I remember the passage in the violin concerto where you ask the cello to play with that groove, and you tell to an orchestra to play that, and 90% of them have probably not heard Freddie Green.
Right, probably 99. That's jazz musicians haven't heard it. So
I remember when I saw it in the score, the first thing I did, I went on YouTube and started listening to Freddie Green. I was like, I didn't understand what Wynton is talking about. So I had a composition actually just a couple of months ago that I premiered, and the composer embedded a QR code above the music where everybody in the orchestra had to put their phone, to the music, and then it directed them to a website where he played exactly what he wanted them to hear in order to understand this passage, which I thought was such a beautiful way to incorporate the 21st century, into.
You see, you're giving me good ideas. There you go.
I have to say the one question that I get the most when people talk to me about your music, the first question that always comes to mind is, has Wynton really written all those notes? And I said, listen, he's taken out more than there are left, because you always, and that's one of the things that also I think makes you very, very special. In my work, I have an entire, I wish I could show you in my office, but I have an entire drawer, like an entire, bookshelf for just Wynton's music, because every time I perform the violin, people don't believe me that every time I perform the violin concerto, it's a new score.
I do that on purpose. JK and I, we do it because, JK copies my music, is my man. It's very personal. He never copied music before he copied mine. He's a bass player. And because we can afford to do it, and because for me, it's more like a hobby, we put it always in concert. He always says, hey, do you want to transpose the score? No, don't transpose it. Keep it in concert. I call it a countryism. I want to keep a certain type of countryism in my thing. So somebody might say, oh, they didn't even transpose the score. Look at how he accounts for the instruments. Sometimes I put the instruments with a little circle around it. It's really country. And I just like to have things that I do that. Why are you doing it, man? I don't know. Get rid of those early scores, though.
No. I'm keeping every one of them. Not because I find it fascinating to see the process of removing what you feel it's not necessary. I think it's so much harder to remove something that is not necessary than to add something that is superfluous. You know?
Right. But you know, I like your advice. I always, when you tell me something, I'll change my music. Like in sometimes, I don't know, in classical music, I hate to even use the term in that way, but there's like a thing where a composer gives you a score is from the hand of God, and the conductor conducts the score and the orchestra plays. I don't believe in all of that. You know, you get some music, you play, you conducting it. You could tell me more in half. You have to, man, I don't, you know, this right here is not going to work. Or I think you should look at it this way. And the fact that I can converse with you, and I know you're dealing with the music. It's not just a job that you're doing. And you're like that about music. I will go back when you say something. I don't know that this works. So, you know, this texture, because I'm also trying to learn about, I didn't take composition classes in that way. And you're a composer, you know music, you understand orchestration, you're looking at scores, you know things. And I've learned more, even just conversations, for 2 or 3 conversations I had with you, man, I learned a lot. Why not learn? You know, why be like, well, I've been out here this amount of time and I know this. My musicianship is much better. And it's something Jerry Mulligan taught me years ago. We always argue about white and black musicians. And Jerry, of course, he told me, he said, well, do you know, have you listened to Adrian Rollini? It's unbelievable bass saxophone, played vibes. I said, no, I didn't listen to him, but I know he's white, because every time you tell me to listen to somebody, it's a white person. So, you know, me and him would go that, but it was always not, it was not combative or disrespectful. Like, we would go back and forth. And I first met him when I was 18. Of course, he's much older than me. And he asked me a question after I told him that. He said, he always had funny things he would say. He said, well, can I ask you a question? He would say, can I ask you a question? Yeah. He said, are you a better musician because you don't know who he is? So we both would start laughing. So, you know, I go check Adrian Rollini out. And that's always the question to me. Are you a better musician because you don't know how to write this in the score? Or are you a better musician because you can't be told by someone who knows something that will help you be a better musician? And yeah, I write it, I rewrite it, I do it again. As long as I'm alive, I look at stuff again, I do it. And the changes after a certain point are very small, but it makes a difference. I work on it, I keep going. And every time you play something, and you know, if you tell me something, yeah, I'm gonna listen to it and reconsider it. And you also, like you just said about the QR code, you're learning new things all the time. I'm not looking at scores with QR codes in them. So just for you to tell me, now that you told me, hey, I'm gonna call JK and say, hey man, I just thought of this thing.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I don't, you know, we're running out of time here. So I just, you know, the last thing for me, I just want you to know on behalf of our entire community at the Cabrillo Festival that it was such an incredible time that we had when you came out, and we did the violin concerto with Nikki, of course. You know, we were able to be there together and with the orchestra. Crazy as this sounds, that was the last performance that we had as an orchestra together, was with you there together. And we're gonna come back. We can't wait to come back. And I cannot wait for you to come back. So this is with open arms and open hearts, you know, an invitation, and we cannot wait to see you again there.
Well, you know, we have to do more. You know, I love you. Of course, your whole family, man. It is very personal. And your dedication and all of what you represent in the festival is so fantastic. I had my festival T-shirt on yesterday. So, I mean, it's interesting to talk with you. Much love, and love to everybody. I look forward to seeing you, and I know y'all gonna be back just as strong as ever.
And Tom Dune asked me to tell you that he absolutely adores the violin concerto, and he keeps listening to it, and it's amazing. So, you
know, and I told him how much I loved his piece when you all did it. Yeah. And I'm gonna see him. I see him sometimes in my neighborhood. We go out and eat and talk. So that's my man.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Winton. We appreciate it.
All right, Christy. Much love, man. Always.